Hey, welcome back. Now that we've learned how to set up an income source and sync all of our existing accounts, what we want to talk about now is we'll move into the rules and how to set up your rules. So I don't need to use pods in this situation, but again, this creates for an instant transfer so that if I want my money to be deposited into the salary bucket, instead of doing individual rules for each of these accounts, every single account moving from salary, what I can do is I can start to aggregate it into these different pods, these accounts, to then send it to my external banks. And I'll show you why that can be actually really valuable in just a moment. Click on our salary and I'm going to drag a rule. And so what this does is this pops up our options for rules. We can trigger by incoming funds, we can trigger by date, and if you're really advanced, you can move into the remote API, which probably most of us won't be doing, and you can even do one-time transfers if you need to move some money around. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to trigger by incoming funds. That means every single time I get paid and money lands in the W-2 salary account, this rule is going to be run. So I'm going to trigger by incoming funds. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to transfer percentage. In this case, 50% is going to be going to our needs. I'm going to click add an account. I'm going to find my wants, and this is all alphabetical. I'm going to send 30% there. I'm going to add an account for the remaining 20, and that is our savings. And when I click save, now all of a sudden that rule will run instantly, whether it's $10,000, $10, $1 million. Every single time money gets deposited into that account, this rule will run. If person's getting $10,000 per month, at the end of the month, there'll be $5,000 in the needs, there'll be $3,000 in the wants, and there'll be $2,000 in the savings account. Now, here's why this can be so advantageous, because now what we can start to do is we can start to send this money to the different accounts. So let's start with savings. What I can do here is I can send money to the Plaid IRA, and this is a Roth IRA. So what we can do is we can now trigger by date. Let's just say because we want to be putting money in once a month into these accounts, I'm going to select the monthly rule. I want to do this on the last day of the month. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to transfer either a fixed amount, a percentage. I could round down the amount of money in there. So I could round down to say $400. Everything that's above it could go to this account, or I could top it up. But what I want to do here is I want to transfer a fixed amount of, let's call it $600 into the IRA, because this is a Roth IRA. And what I can even do is I can add a limit. So I think the rules right now are about $7,000 per year. So I can even add a limit. So what this is going to do is this is going to put $600 into my Roth IRA on the last day of the month until it hits $7,000. That way I know I'm not going to put too much money in there, be subject to penalties, but I'm going to make sure that I'm maxing it out. So we have that rule set up. And now I'm going to add another rule, and I want to transfer 100% of the remainder. So transfer percentage of the remainder, 100%, to the brokerage account. So any money that's left after putting the $600 in here, everything else is going to be going to the brokerage account. So just like that, I've set this up so that our savings money is all set. I'm maxing out my Roth IRA, and I'm making sure that anything extra is going into the brokerage account. Now you can do the same thing for wants in this case, right? In this case, in this situation, they have a checking account, a savings account. And now what I've realized is this account down here is actually for our business. So I'm going to drag it beneath the business just to keep everything separate. So now when we move into our wants section, what I'm going to do is I can start to drag this down. And now we're going to trigger by date. And instead of being paid monthly, let's try the bi-weekly, because some people want to have more consistent money come in. If you're used to a bi-weekly paycheck, well, we can mimic that here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to transfer a fixed amount every 2 weeks of $2,000 into their checking account. And what we're going to do next is we're actually going to, instead of transferring a fixed amount, we're going to transfer a percent of the remainder, in this case, everything that's left over, into the Plaid savings account, because that is their emergency fund. So now the last thing I need to do is pick which day of the week. In this case, it's going to be Friday. And now we have it set up. So what I can do is I can relabel this Plaid savings to call this our emergency fund. And just like that, now every other week, $2,000 will be getting deposited into the checking account, and everything else will be going into the emergency fund. So again, there's many ways that we can utilize these rules, and we'll be going over those in future videos as well, because there's no perfect answer. It depends on how you want to set up your finances in order to figure out the best way to set up your rules, but this is a great way to do it. Now, lastly, in the needs, I'm bucketing the needs. Let's just assume that all of these are our fixed expenses. What a lot of our members do is how most people start out their finances. They have all of their bills being paid out of their checking account. 100% of their income goes into their checking account and 100% of their expenses come out of their checking account. That's a hard way to manage your money. So what we've done as a family and what most of our users have done is they've started to separate those expenses. So instead of 100% of their money going to the checking account, it now goes to the income source. And instead of 100% of their spending coming from the checking account, what they do is they turn their checking account into their actual fun money, the wants in this case, and then move everything else to a different account. It can either be a pod or it can be one of these different accounts that you already have set up. So in my case, what I've done is I've used this account, the needs account, as our recurring payment. So all of my recurring expenses bill from this routing number and this account number. That way I have my fixed expenses going into one account and everything else is going into my checking account or my investments so that I'm not overspending and I'm able to save the appropriate amount of money each month that I want to do and that my wife wants to do in order to reach our goals. So now what we can do with our needs here is we can start to send this to our cards or our bills. So since most bills are due monthly, we'll typically do a trigger by date. So select monthly. Let's just call this on the first of the month. And when you're sending it to a liability, you'll see a new set of rules. You can transfer a fixed amount, a percentage, round down, and some of the most interesting pieces, you can use the debt avalanche, the debt snowball. You can pay the current balance, a percent of the liability, the minimum payment due, or the last statement balance. So in this case, we can set up the statement balance to the Plaid credit card. We'll add another rule. Let's do a fixed amount to the mortgage, because we know how much our mortgage is. In this case, let's just assume it's $950. I know it's a small mortgage of $7,500, but just bear with us. And then for the remaining two, which are the student loan and the car loan, let's show you how we can use the debt avalanche or the debt snowball. Now, if you're not familiar with debt snowball, it's popularized by Dave Ramsey. It takes a look at all of your debts that you want to include. It takes a look at their balances. And then what it does is it pays the minimum payment due on each of the balances that you have added to this debt snowball strategy, and then takes the remainder of that money that you have set aside to paying off your debt and puts it towards the lowest balance. And you can see that right here. This action will use however much money we put in there to pay the minimum amount due on the debts that we want to, and all remaining funds will be transferred to the liability. So in this case, we want to execute debt snowball. We want a percentage of the balance of 100% of what's left over. And we want that to go to the student loan. And I want to add another account and the car loan. So now we have 100% of what's left after paying the credit card and the mortgage is going to be put towards the minimum payment due for student loan and car loan, and all of the remaining debt or all of the remaining money will be put towards the account with the lowest balance. In this case, that's the student loan. So by clicking save, now all of a sudden, got this spider web, but let's map this out a little bit. What we can see here is that we have a fully executed debt payoff strategy that pays off our credit card, pays off our mortgage, and that is using the debt snowball strategy to dramatically reduce the amount of time it takes for us to pay off our student loan and our car loan. So I know we've covered a lot here, but I wanted to walk you through the process of how can you start to set up your rules to accomplish your financial goals in a way that makes sense and puts it on autopilot for you. So if you want to learn more, make sure to watch the next video as well.